and then eventually crossed in.
Why
Or
you say undermining,
uh,
agitating, getting them.
impacting the governments, change. We we've had people. The CIA has openly admitted to fomenting what were known as the color revolutions that occurred across Europe. Uh,
Spring, spring,
Arab Spring,
Arab Spring.
probably involved in that as well,
Mm-hmm.
probably trying to duplicate the process. And so the idea was that, okay, well, if the Russians won't submit, if they think they're going to be our equals, that's not acceptable. And so that resulted in the Russians kind of moving away from the, okay, well, if we're not going to play like that, well, then we need to fortify our national boundaries. So then they began leaning into nationalism, which of course the neoliberal order said, that's completely not acceptable. And so the major point of friction becomes Ukraine, where of course the Russians, Ukraine has been part of Russia in some form for over 250 years. So when we mess in Ukraine, it's equivalent to if a foreign power tried to put in a government in Canada or tried to put a government in Mexico. Because all of a sudden we go from having a border we barely need to look at to a border we need to heavily fortify. Completely changes the outcome of things. Uh, so uh, to give both sides their due, one side will just say, well, we were just, whatever we were doing in Ukraine and stuff Ukraine wanted us to do was no big deal. Russia's the aggressor in the end, so it doesn't matter what all that stuff was. And Russia is at fault for that, no doubt about it. But the other side saying, we knew what the outcome was going to be. We agitated until that outcome occurred. And we're getting into the problem area now is in terms of the establishment faction that's starting to push back against that. They're saying, we're doing this against a pure nuclear power. And they have threatened several times saying, hey, Russia and Putin said, there are red lines. If you cross them, we will have to use nuclear weapons at some point. And basically, our establishment on the whole is saying, nah, they'll never do it. They're too chicken to do it. And if they even do it, yeah, exactly. They're like, well, they have a certain hubris to it, where they're
Mm-hmm.
like, they can't see how they fail. They're just like, we can't fail.
Yeah.
It's progress. Progress always continues going forward. It hits roadblocks, and eventually we just overcome them, and it keeps going. So the horizon, we just keep heading towards it, no matter what happens. Whereas this other faction is saying we've pushed it too far. Um, we're putting our country in danger for something that's not going to gain us a whole lot in the end. Uh, we're putting too much money into this, and it's not necessarily good for us to have troops everywhere around the world. And so, what this call it a dissident faction, the counter faction is basically saying is we need to be pulling back. We need to be putting more resources against America rather than foreign adventures. And we need to find a way to create partnerships that to good, like instead of a NATO run by the United States, a NATO run by Europe. That's still our friend that we still help out, but we're no longer in the driver's seat, and they're allowed to make their own mistakes and and stuff on their own. Another thing that we're trying to do, and this was happening under Trump, this is why I think part of this dissident faction is the Abraham Accords in the Middle East. Essentially, is attempting to create a military bloc between the Arab countries and Israel in order to thwart expansion of Iran, uh, possibly Russia, and any other disruptive group that might form up in that. And the our establishment as a whole doesn't like those ideas. NATO with the U.S. in charge, yes, great. If there's going to be any kind of military alliance forming in the Middle East, it has to be completely under U.S. control. It can't be the regional powers working together to thwart their common enemies. So that's where I see a lot of the friction occurring between. So that's why we see someone like RFK who says, no, the biggest problem we're facing right now is nuclear annihilation. If we keep going down this road, we're risking nuclear war. And that's so much bigger than all the other positions I was with that I'm willing to throw in under Trump to make it happen. Uh, Tulsi has been a major complainer against the military state for a long time. In fact, that's how she went on the outs with the Democratic Party in the first place. They put her because they looked at her and, oh, she's a pretty woman and she's smart and she's articulate. We're going to put her on all the key committees so that she's going to be a rising star and she's going to be one of our presidential candidates. And then when she came out questioning things, they're like, oh, we need to shut her down. So that's why she's over where she's at. So somebody like Liz Cheney and Dick Cheney heading over to the Harris side, well, they're both warmongers. I mean, that there's no way to mince the words around that. So they are literally. So that would tell me that they see the threat of this faction who's trying to change the establishment. Say, oh, that's too far. We can't step away from any war. So we're going over to Harris, and a whole bunch of mid-level Bush appointee basically signed a big letter and headed that way.
I mean, that's kind of scary because it's that much of an issue that they're gonna leave their own party and support the opposite party.
Right.
They got to feel a lot of threat, and I think I'd be kind of worried if I were
Yeah.
Trump and RFK and
Right.
Tulsi, all the ones that are leading this.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Yeah.
it's that important to them, that much of a threat that they're gonna jump ship and.
Yeah, and none of these people are really saying, well, gee, like on one side they're not, oh, Trump's the greatest guy ever, blah blah blah. And then the other side is not saying, well, gee, Harris is, look at Harris's commanding leadership ability. No, they're going there for the issue. And uh, so I think really this is a fantastic illustration of why our ideas on left right politics don't make sense. This is just one issue. I'll throw a couple others out there. But so the fact that people are just crossing the line without even there, so it means the line's not real. Okay. Um, and the fact that we're seeing uh, that this grouping, that what we would look at normally as party lines is crossing as well, shows us there is an establishment that sits in the background. Um, it is part of the command and control structure of the United States, and every other country has its own establishment. Okay, so uh, probably one of the other issues that comes up is, and it fits into it dovetails into this, where it's a similar issue, but it's not as direct, and that is the idea of globalism versus nationalism. And the thing is nationalism always takes a really hard beating because of what happened in the 30s and 40s in Europe. However, there's this idea of what's called liberal nationalism. And liberal nationalism is the ideas that formed around Great Britain and the United States when they were nationalistic, but they also brought the greatest expansion of liberty to their own people in the process of doing this. So it was a beneficial nationalism. Like, okay, form together as a group, we form together as a nation, and one of our main goals is protecting and expanding our liberty. And we do it as a group. And the reason why we do it as a group, because if we all agree on this, we don't have dissent over things like speech. Where everyone just said, yeah, we know what free speech is. There might be a few, you know, niddling details on the edge where we're like, okay, well, what are these? Can you slander someone? Can you lie about somebody? What is agitating? What is calling people to action? That kind of stuff. But in general, liberal nationalism gave us made these rights work because we're all on the same page. one of the problems that comes out of the neoliberal order is their focus is global first. So when they look at things and say, "Oh, look, the standard of living in the United States is falling," well, a neoliberal will say, "Well, that's just the price we pay for the big picture." Because when this neoliberal order is fully in place, this world is going to be a fantastic, wonderful place to be. So the fact that, yeah, we see the standard of living falling, we'll lie to the people and say, "Oh, everything's doing great." Yeah, we know it's happening and we know why it's happening, but the resources have to go to the global order before they come to the nation. And so we see people also in this dissident movement within the establishment saying, "We've gone too far here too." The people are our primary concern. We have to, if our people aren't doing better with each passing year, what's the point in doing this all? We can still make the world a better place, but we have to look at our own people first. We can't put anything ahead of them. Um, and so that leads into the whole rights issue too, where it's like the free speech being an example. We're seeing movement against a free speech we've never seen before. I mean, typically, who's associated with free speech party wide,
Well, it would be,
right? And the Republicans were always the one going, "Oh well, oh no, that's pornography, so that's
yeah.
not really free speech, and that's communist talking, so we're kind of leery about allowing that to get out there." And it seems to more or less reversed itself. You still see some of the conservatives in the, because the Republican Party is not all conservatives. Clearly, Trump coalition definitely isn't all conservatives. So you do see some calls for free speech restrictions within the conservative movement, but they're very minimal compared to what the restrictions the Democrats are calling for. And again, I think this is, step back and look at it from an establishment point of view. The establishment is looking at it as, okay, this paper free speech, the stuff we're getting on the internet, um, it's allowing people to see the things we're doing that we're able to basically do. Machinery is visible, I guess, is a saying thing. Because most people wouldn't look at things and say, "Oh, look at all these things going around in the world." They would just say, "Oh well, I'm too busy doing my work and taking care of my family to pay attention to these." And the information wouldn't have been available anyway. Where now it's all readily available. Yeah, yeah,
The Wizard of
yeah,
Oz.
you get the little man behind the
Yeah.
curtain. And so I think we see that issue playing out as well, as where we have a lot of people like Jimmy Dore, uh, Glenn Greenwald, to a lesser extent Bill Maher, who's at least he's like going, "What the heck are you guys doing?" At least he
Yeah.
may be still in his camp, but he's at least yelling at them. Good. So these free speech advocates are either at least pointing out the problems in their own group or actively coming into this whole Trump camp. Um, so, and that, you know, step back to where I was talking about the liberal nationalism. Uh, they're basically acknowledging, yeah, there is a place for, uh, we can be a nation of people who are, proud of what we've accomplished and what we've done, without turning into we can do this without turning into the Third Reich, because it's more important that we uh, safeguard the rights that have been important to this all this while, because these rights are more important than the global order they're trying to push. And the fact that these rights seem to be bothering the other part of the establishment means that they see them as a threat, what they're trying to do. So it's kind of a, if you look at it from either side, it's a problem. The fact that they want to get rid of it's a problem, and the fact that they see that free speech is a threat to them is a problem. That you be coalescing and embracing. I think that kind of covers what I was aiming at. So, do you see any where do I need to expand or what do I need to clarify?
Where does it go?
Well,
What
that
are the possible, I know you
yeah,
don't know exactly where it's going, but what happens with all this?
we don't know. So right
And how
now,
long does it?
yeah. So the thing is, so on the political party side, we're seeing changes occur. For instance, okay, I just mentioned free speech advocates are shifting over to the Republican Party. The anti-war people are shifting over to the Republican Party. You're also seeing a breakdown of the old racial identitarian groups, whereas you know pretty much the Democrats completely count on certain groups, Black Americans. Say yes, they're always going to vote for us. Well, those numbers are shifting over because people are. There's a lot of reasons why, but primarily they're saying, well, this isn't panning out for us. Saying it's going to benefit
Yeah.
us, but it's not. So that order is starting to break down and it has to go someplace. Now, the question is how much of what's going on is Trump? How much of it is the people formed around him? Um, if there's a large enough circle of people who formed around him, uh, this is something that could build and keep moving, and we could see fairly significant changes in under a decade. Uh, if they can put it together and keep uh, one of the big problems is how far the other side of the establishment is push it to keep their dreams and goals alive. Do they push it far enough to where enough of the establishment says, "Oh, this is way too far," and they come over to this side, and then you basically have a change that's more peaceful, like the Jacksonian Revolution or the progressive takeover of the establishment. Or alternately, if the other side is not willing to compromise at some point, and this side is saying this is too important, well, that's when you get revolution and civil war. Uh, so yeah, there's different routes this could go, and it could all peter out. I mean, the dissident side may not be able to put it together. They may not have, because the thing is they do have areas where they differ heavily with each other. And so you have to find a really good example is talking about the conservatives. Right now, the conservatives are in full mode going, oh, Trump won't back a national abortion ban. That would be politically stupid. But they can't get it through their heads that um, what happened during the Trump administration going into the Biden administration Supreme Court. Um, that was a massive gain for them and
Who?
for the conservatives
Yeah.
for their particular views. And so they were seeing it as you know we're now ascendant. We're now going, our view, our goal on the horizon. We're going to keep heading towards it. It's just all going to keep falling our way because they refused to understand what was going on. It wasn't a conservative victory that was occurring. It was a movement of the political capital occurring. Basically, Trump used that group to pull them in, saying, "Okay, now I've built my coalition, and you're here." But he's not a conservative. Trump Trump is really he's a progressive, but he's an old school progressive. He's the type more like a JFK progressive, where it's like, okay, yep, there's these government institutions, we got to do things the way we need to do them, but the people are important too. We can't The institutions can't be advanced at the price of the. We have to figure
Mhm.
out how to make both of them work, and I think Trump is of that ilk. And so the conservatives get confused, thinking, well, look, he was a conservative. It's like, no, he wasn't. He never was. You wanted him to be, and you saw him as one when you had your victory. Now you have to deal with how do you fit into this new coalition in the party. You go, well, what we've been given is insufficient, so now we're going to go pout and go off in the corner and form some little party that's going to be completely insignificant, and then in the process of it, shatter that coalition so that it can't work. Or do they say, okay, we figure out how to work within this coalition? We've gotten a gain for us that's so far beyond what we've had before. We should be happy with that and work within the confines of the system that's allowing us to do this. So we don't get our national ban, but we can keep working in the States. If they can accept that idea, And like I said, there's more than just there's all kinds of little coalitions in there. Each one of them's got to find their place. Where it's like, okay, what do we want? Will everybody else in the coalition agree with that? What are the things we're willing to put on the back burner and say, okay, we can't get this, so we're willing to sacrifice it for this other good in order to make the coalition work. So that's what makes a big difference to whether this works or not. Can this all hold together? Can they cobble together the ideas that they can all work together with in such a way that this makes the next step becomes an impactful party?
Well, maybe it could work because this is true or not, or it makes sense, but Trump really isn't a politician. You know, that's not how he lived his life, the politician government. So there are these, pretty high up people coming with him. So they don't have these roadblocks where, this person has built their way up to where they're getting today. They've always wanted to be there. There's no way to sway them. They're in with the system,
Yeah.
establishment. He's not. So they think that there's a chance for it. I bet you RFK Jr. never would have done that with another candidate.
Yeah.
Because Trump,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he's not the best person in the world, but he seems to listen to people. Not it's like he's open minded,
Well,
but
the thing is, and it's his biggest plus and his biggest minus at the same time.
true.
He has no philosophy.
Right.
And so the thing is, on one hand, you sit there and go, "What the hell is he going to do next?" Because
Yeah,
he
like
had
the
no.
last person he talked to, or
Yeah.
an old friend of ours was like that.
But on the flip side, it also means he's going to sit down and listen to the person and say, "Okay, I see what your biggest concern is. What how do we turn this into a deal? How do we work?" Because he'll tell them point blank, "Look, we need you in here to make this work, but that thing there can't come with you. It just can't, because otherwise it doesn't work." So I mean, yeah, that's probably, that his lack of philosophy is perplexing to everybody who are ideologues, but at the same time, it's probably the one thing that's allowing him to put all this together as well. I think we've reached a good point. I appreciate you coming on with me tonight and sitting here with me. Uh, this was not coming out at all when I was trying to do it by myself, so it's great. Uh, so if you have any questions about what we've been talking about, please put it down in the comment section. It's a wide enough question. I might even do another video on that. Definitely try to answer all my comments. Please smash the like button. If the YouTube algorithm has brought you here and you're not a regular subscriber, look at my other titles. Get into a lot of different things. Surely you'll find something you like. Consider subscribing. And if you know somebody who might find this interesting, please share it with them. Thank you for spending time with me this evening. Hope to see you again in a future video.